Okay, chapter 7 starts on page 127. So if you open up your book to that page, we'll get started here. We're going to be discussing how to interpret both prescriptions and medication orders, and then also how to interpret labels on stock medications. So starting with prescriptions. So prescriptions are med orders that are sent to the pharmacy in an outpatient setting. So places like a retail pharmacy where the patients are coming in, picking up their drugs, and leaving. Whereas in an inpatient setting, we refer to those orders as medication orders. So pharmacies in a hospital setting or a long-term care setting where patients are actually staying in that facility, we refer to them as medication orders. Just a couple words here for some pharmacy terminology. We have pharmacokinetics, so that's going to be how drugs move throughout the body. And then also pharmacotherapeutics, so the different uses and side effects that drugs have on the body. And that can be, what they are intended for, the effects that they're intended to give off, or some potential, side effects of the drug that could be harmful to the patient as well. So when we're looking at prescriptions, there are a few different parts of a prescription, and you do need to work on memorizing what these mean. So the first one we have here is what we call the superscription, and that's just going to be the RX symbol that you'll see on every prescription. And what that symbol stands for, it means take this drug. If you would like to follow along on page 128, there is actually an example prescription that has all of these terms on it. I'll show that here on my screen here in just a little bit as well. So the superscription, that is going to be the RX symbol. That's always going to be followed by the inscription, which is going to tell us the medication name, dosage form, strength, and quantity. Now, a lot of times prescribers don't take the time to write out the dosage form. That should just be implied. However, that is involved in the inscription as well. And then we have the signa or the signatura. We usually just refer to that as the SIG. So that's going to be the directions for the patient on how to take the drug. So how to take it, how much, at what time, and for how long. And then what is not included in here on the slides, it is here in the book. You also may see what we call a subscription. So you'll see this on any compounded medications. So a subscription just tells either the pharmacist or the technician how to compound that medication if needed. You'll see that a lot with, simple compounds like Magic mouthwash. We can just mix those up with ingredients over the counter. But regardless, this is the general layout of a prescription. So we always have at the top doctor's name and their location, so where the prescription is coming from, the date that the prescription was written, the patient's name, and their other information here, address and phone number. Sometimes you'll see the phone number on there as well. And then we'll always have the patient's date of birth. So the superscription is just the RX symbol. That's going to be followed by the inscription, and then sometimes the subscription if it's a compound, and then the SIG. Every prescription also is going to have what we call a DAW. So that's going to be, sometimes you'll see two lines where the prescriber can sign where it will say substitution allowed or substitution permitted or dispense as written. So like I said, sometimes they could either just circle one of these or sometimes there will be two different lines, and depending on where they sign, That's going to tell us what we need to do with that prescription, which we'll talk about DAW codes in the future. But regardless, the prescriber will be signing the prescription somewhere. If you ever receive a prescription that's handwritten and it is not signed, it is invalid. It cannot be filled without that signature on it. Also, however many refills that the prescriber ordered will also be noted on the prescription. And if they are dispensing a controlled substance, the prescriber's DEA number will also have to be listed as well. So I would, maybe put a little sticky note on this page. This is a really good reference. Definitely a good tool to help you out to kind of remember all of those different parts of a prescription. And then below that, we have an example of a label, of how a label might look. Every pharmacy is different, every system is different. And then right below that, I would also recommend highlighting this section as I have done in the book here. So the ISMP recommends that we use numeric rather than alphabetic characters when we are interpreting prescription labels. So for example, we would say take 2 times a day rather than writing out the word 2 or saying twice daily. So we really prefer to use those numbers rather than writing out the words for any numeric digits there. So just keep that in mind as you're doing your assignments this week and as we go throughout the future. Okay, so all of those things I just discussed are also listed in your slide here. So we're going to get into some examples now. I am on page 121 in your textbook. If you'd like to follow along, I'm going to do some problems out of the pretest here. So when we are interpreting prescriptions, now remember, prescriptions are for outpatient settings. So our patients are going to be taking these prescriptions home. So we are talking about interpreting labels. So the directions that somebody is going to have on their bottle that they take home, okay? So we need to make these instructions as clear and as direct as possible. We don't ever want to assume that our patients know anything really about medications. So really just make it as easy as we can. So once again, I'm on page 121, looking at number 9 here. All this says to do is write the label directions. So how the directions would appear on the patient's bottle. So we're going to read this SIG here, and it says tab I POTID. So we need to first interpret that. What does that mean? Well, it's a tablet. They're going to take 1 by mouth 3 times a day. So for the patient, when we're writing these directions, always start with a verb, okay? So in this case, it's a tablet. So anytime we see a tablet or capsule, we're always going to start with take. So take 1. Remember, we use numeric digits rather than writing that out. Take 1 tablet. Write out the full word tablet. Don't leave that as tab. Take 1 tablet by mouth 3 times a day. So very simple. We're just going to interpret the directions as they would appear on the patient's bottle. Okay, now I'm on page 122, looking at number 10 here. So we're going to read these directions now. So here we have 2 capsules by mouth 4 times a day for 2 weeks. Sorry about that. My Zoom was glitching out here. Okay, so we have 2 capsules by mouth 4 times a day for 2 weeks, and then 1 capsule by mouth 2 times a day for 2 weeks, then 1 capsule by mouth daily. So once again, we're just going to write those directions out as we would for the patient on their bottle. So once again, always start with a verb. We have capsules here, so we're going to start with take. So take 2 capsules by mouth 4 times a day for 2 weeks. Then 1 capsule by mouth twice a day or 2 times a day for 2 weeks. Then 1 capsule by mouth daily. So pretty long sig there, but once again, write it all out fully in words. All right, now I'm on page 123, looking at number 12 here. So when we're interpreting this one here, we have 1 tablet by mouth daily. C with a line over that means with the evening meal or at bedtime with a snack for hyperlipidemia. So when we're looking at this word, hyper means above. Lipid, so that's going to be referring to fat. So this is actually high fat or high cholesterol. So, interpreting this as for high cholesterol would be better for the patient because we don't want to assume that they know what hyperlipidemia actually means. So if you ever get a word, that's pretty scientific, maybe, break that down as easy as possible for the patient. So in this one here, we have take 1 tablet by mouth daily with the evening meal or at bedtime with a snack for high cholesterol. Okay, one more example here. I'm on number 13 on page 123. So now this one, when we look at this, it says Humulin. This is a 10 ml vial. So we don't have tablets or capsules this time. The SIG says 22 units subcutaneously every morning, okay? So we know this is a subcutaneous injection. So we wouldn't say take 22 units. It would be better for us to say inject. So we always want to, make sure that the verb that we're using matches whatever drug it is that we are dispensing. So in this case, we would say inject 22 units subcutaneously every morning. Okay, so when you start working on practice problems A, it has a space for you to interpret the prescription and then write the label directions for the patient. So I think this is a little bit redundant. So on the section that says prescription interpretation, I only want you to write the drug name, strength, and quantity that is being prescribed. So in this case, on the interpretation, all I would need to write is atorvastatin, 10 milligrams, number 30, that would be the quantity. And then down here in my label directions, that's when I'm going to write the directions as the patient would receive. So in this case, take 1 tablet by mouth nightly at bedtime. Make sure you put the take in there at the beginning. So practice problems A, you can do that for all of those. Just the drug name, strength, and quantity there on the interpretation section.